Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tate and Paul for a very special spoiler discussion. And I am going to jump in and say we are not doing this live. We are pre-recording this on the Tuesday before Wicked for Good comes out because the three of us have seen the film early. We're going to be getting into all the spoilers, what we thought of it, what we thought of part one, them together, maybe some behind-the-scenes musical things. We can't talk about other things we would, like the box office, because obviously this isn't out for people to see. So it's going to be an interesting one. And as always, we do want to hear from people. So please do comment your thoughts. As it's a spoiler discussion, you can post whatever you like to post. It is out in cinemas now. So if you have not seen the film, do click away unless you really do not go. Maybe you saw the musical. Maybe you've only seen The Wizard of Oz. We're going to be talking about everything. But before we do, how are we all doing tonight?
Doing okay. Looking forward to this discussion because I'm sure that at this point people wouldn't be clicking on this review if they hadn't seen the first film. So I'm intrigued to have a discussion about kind of thoughts on the second film from people like yourself, George, who maybe aren't the biggest fans of musicals as well, to take that kind of sided take of things and just have a general discussion about one of what should be one of the biggest films towards the end of the year.
No, I'm doing well and happy to be talking about Wicked because, I love Wicked.
Excellent. I mean, that's where we're going to kickstart. So, for the people watching at home, part one came out a year ago. But I want to ask both of you, before I get to mine, what were your not only thoughts on part one very briefly, but what is your history with Wicked? Maybe you read the book. Maybe you're a fan of Oz, the original books, going back, like the start of the 19th century? No, 20th century. Just your history with it leading into part two.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning. I have seen The Wizard of Oz. as everyone has probably seen The Wizard of Oz. I have also seen Wiz, which was the Michael Jackson version of The Wizard of Oz, which is very, very cool as well. And I have seen the Wicked musical as well. And that was kind of my before going into the first Wicked Part 1. And I really enjoyed Wicked Part 1. I thought the casting was spot on. I thought, the sets and the kind of the musical numbers were excellently put to screen. It was bright, it was vibrant, captured the eye. I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. But there was always something in the back of my mind, and that comes from my experience with the musical. I absolutely loved everything before the intermission in the musical. I thought it was one of the strongest kind of opening kind of acts for a musical that I'd seen live in the West End. I really didn't like part two. The songs aren't anywhere near as good. The narrative is unusual and takes a while to get your head around. And I kind of came away from the musical thinking, wow, Defying Gravity was kind of, the peak of this musical. And then it kind of dropped off from there. And that's kind of what I was expecting from this film going into it. So weirdly, I actually didn't have good expectations going into this film.
Paul?
I mean, I have also seen The Wizard of Oz. I have also seen The Wiz. I have seen that. I've seen The Muppet Wizard of Oz, which is also very good.
Is there a Muppet Wizard of Oz?
There is. It was made for TV. Ashanti plays Dorothy. It's okay. I've seen the music. I've not read the book. I've not read any of the original L. Frank Baum books either, so I'm not familiar on that end, and I've not read the Gregory Maguire book. But I had seen the stage show. I think I've seen it twice, actually. I knew it because my sister had seen it, like when it first opened, and she was obsessed with it. I'd seen it maybe twice, and I'd always thought this would make a great film. But I do agree that the second half is the weaker half. Like, I think I liked it because it gets a bit darker and a bit more complex, and the way that it kind of plays with the Wizard of Oz is quite interesting. I quite like the way it sort of flits around the edges of the Wizard of Oz. But it is 100% true that the songs are not as good. Like, they really front loaded that musical with the songs, because like part one is just like banger after banger after banger. Like, it's like No One Mourns the Wicked's great, and then Wizard and I is great, Loathing is great, Popular's great, Dancing Through Life is great. It's just, and then Defying Gravity is like the peak, and then this one, it's like there's a couple of good ones. There's a couple of good ones.
You got No Good Deed, you know.
Yeah, No Good Deed is good, and as long as your mine is good, and for good is really good. But the problem is that they are few and far between, and that is, and I knew that going in, so I was, are they gonna maybe do something more with part two, and maybe allow for a little bit more character development, maybe go into the Wizard of Oz a bit more, because they have the time, and like the first one's like 2.5 hours, like you could do that again, but yeah, it was always going to be a tough one.
Excellent. I mean, for me, that's nice to hear, because I have seen The Wizard of Oz. If I just jump back to part one ever so briefly, so I saw The Wizard of Oz as a kid, like everyone else has. The characters, whatever. I'd never read any of the books. I didn't even know it was a book series when I was younger, until Wicked came out. And obviously I know that Wicked is a separate book, like published in the 90s. I've not seen the musical, which probably isn't a shock to anyone. I've only seen one musical in the West End of London. I kind of want to see more. I just never ever buy tickets because it's extortion.
Which musical was that?
Book of Mormon, because it's basically just South Park. And I thought it was great. I am watching Paddington the musical next year. I said that quietly.
So am I.
I'm excited, he says quietly, because it's a present and they can probably hear me out there for the family. But yes, I shall be watching The Bear. I don't know how it's a musical, but it is. I'll change the subject. I loved Wicked Part 1. I went to the cinema for it last year. I had no idea what to expect, and I remember rocked up to that foyer, and it was the busiest I'd seen a foyer at my cinema since Barbenheimer. Everyone was in pink. And I was like, oh, I've severely misjudged the attire for this event. And I ended up booking my ticket on the morning of the day, which for my cinema, normally you're going to get a good seat irrespective of the time. It's not that busy an area unless it's like a Marvel midnight or something. I had a front row seat, so I just booked it and just sat in the 4 reserved Cineworld staff seats. That's a good tip for anyone that doesn't know about those that exist. Always sit in them if you want a better seat. And it was full, and people were crying, people were making noises, as in, like, they clearly wanted to sing, like they were humming, like they knew a bit of it. And I was just sat there like, this is really big. And as I said, I liked it. I then rewatched The Wizard of Oz the first time in years that night. And I was like, oh, something's going to have to happen to a character. We'll get to her later on. But I, across the last 12 months, have found out a couple of big spoilers, which we can talk about today. I won't just list them because they're detailed points, but within 10 minutes of finishing the film last year, I knew that Jeff Goldblum was the dad, because I text Charlie, good friend of the channel, and was like, it's Jeff Goldblum, isn't it? And I was like, he was making weird noises, and I recognise those weird noises. It's him.
He was pumpering. Yes. Yes.
And then, thanks to social media, I just started to piece that, oh, these characters we met are going to become these characters from The Wizard of Oz. I was like, cool. I was like, I'm really looking forward to seeing that, because I'd like to see the transformation or what they've been like. So I rewatched it on Tuesday before we all went together on Wednesday. I still really like part 1. I'm not a big musical theatre type guy, if I can say that. So maybe I'll get banished for saying this. If I watch a musical at the time, when they actually start singing, I just tend to like computer down for a couple of minutes. Not like I'm not paying attention. I just don't really listen to the words specifically. Some songs better than others, but yeah, I was a bit excited for part 2. I wanted to see it early because it was going to be this big event. Everyone was talking about it. Last year's press tour was weird and long. This year's press tour, well, obviously everyone knows what's going on with the person in prison, which is just insane. But this leads us to talking about this tonight. And my brief initial thoughts on part 2, which I'm very close to both of you too. I liked part 2. Maybe not as much as I wish I had or thought potentially, but I liked it still a lot. And I think it's probably on par at a first glance for me with part one, which kind of works with it being a part one and part two. But I know now the review embargo has lifted tonight of us recording, that is not necessarily a shared opinion. And I want to know what both of you think before we really get into it.
This film is a big step down from part one, safe to say. And I think that was my opinion coming out the cinema. I was so unsure. I was like, yeah, people are going to be hyped coming out this film. But once again, I was kind of expecting that. You go to watch a musical and you expect the songs to be good. They expect to capture you. And they even added in new songs to try and kind of, draw out the runtime and stuff like that. But the problem was, and this is a criticism of the musical, this isn't a criticism of the film because the film is just doing the musical. The criticism of the musical is that part two becomes bloated and it feels like the plot is a bit thin and it's like trying to shoehorn things in to make it fit with The Wizard of Oz, whereas the story was fine before because it was something original. And it's like the whole Game of Thrones thing. Game of Thrones was fine up until Benioff and Weiss started to have to shoehorn different things in to fit their own mold. This film kind of follows just what part two does, but the two new songs are not capturing even slightly, to the point where genuinely coming out of it, I was like, I just like the two new songs are like, well, they're not going to win Best Original Song, which is why they're in the film. They're in the film to pad out the runtime, make it a little bit longer, but also they were there so that each of them had a song that they could put forwards for Best Original Song, which they couldn't do last time. So I was like, okay, as far as an adaptation of the stage musical, it's good, it's fine, and I enjoyed the film. I think I gave it like a 4 stars or something like that on my own Letterboxd, so I did enjoy it. But at the same time, it's a massive step down from part one, and that is partly due to the musical second part just not being anywhere near as good as the first.
Yeah, I mean, can't agree. I did like it, and I got to take my spouse, who loves part one, watches it all the time, and my 6-year-old watches it all the time and is obsessed with part one. He absolutely adores it, like to the point where for his birthday he wants to go and see part two. That's like all he's wanted to see for a year. I remember we watched it around Christmas time when it was on like digital, and then it says to be continued, and he went, oh, okay, can we watch the second part now? And I went, oh no, it's not out for a year. And he went, what? And anytime I take him to the cinema, they play the Wicked for Good train, and he's like, is it out yet? And I was like, not out yet, I'm afraid. So he is like hyped for it. I'm curious to see if he'll like it, because I feel like part one, and this is a bit of a weird comparison, it's a bit like when they split Stephen King's It into 2 films. The first part, the Losers Club, the kids, is such a like primal story. Like when you're a kid, everything is life and death, and that whole thing of you're scared of the monsters under your bed, and the friendships you form are the most important friendships of your life. The first time you fall in love is the most important love of your life. And Wicked kind of has a similar thing. That adolescent, I don't belong because I'm slightly different, falling in love for the first time, finding the friends that you want to be friends with. So it's such a solid story that pretty much everyone can relate to. It's kind of hard to fuck with, really. Like you can't really tweak such a story. But a lot like It Chapter 2, Wicked for Good is such an esoteric story, and it's like, well, actually you're losing some of that universality, because everybody has to be a kid and everybody has to go through puberty. But like It Chapter 2, not everybody becomes a Hollywood screenwriter or a stand-up comedian or has an abusive marriage or loses the weight they had when they were a fat kid. And with Wicked, it's like not everybody fights against a fascist government. And so it's slightly more, it's more adult, but at the same time, it's also less universal. So there's so much more that can dip and go wrong. And I think it could have done with not being as faithful to the stage show.
It
I know
needed
they
more
didn't
whimsy.
have a choice.
It needed a rewrite.
I think it did, because the thing is, I always thought Jeff Goldblum was a good choice for the Wizard, because I know, as much as
Agreed.
he is Jeff Goldblum, he is a good actor. I think people may forget that now, but back in the day, he was a good actor. And there are certain moments in the first film where I was like, that's why he's good casting. Because, like, you know, he shows up and he's dancing and singing and doing magic tricks, and he's doing the Goldblum stuff. But it's that final shot in the first one when she's singing and she says, you know, no wizard that there is or was. And it then zooms in on him, staring at her. And he's like, you know, he's kind of scared, but he's also kind of angry. And he just looks at him like, that's why it's good casting. Because the mask of Jeff Goldblum slips and it's like, he's actually a bastard. And yeah, this one, I just think it could have done with more whimsy, and it could have done with maybe just changing things a little bit and sort of deepening the storytelling a bit more, because it feels very frantic.
Yeah, that's a great starting point, because I want to say this. The opening song happens, and the thing that because I know it's playing catch up, it's a part one. I'm glad you mentioned it. That's a great comparison, and that's one I want to rewatch, because I'm hearing very good stuff about Welcome to Derry at the moment. HBO's got another good one. I turned to Ren on the first song because they were like 12 clocks has passed since she was Wicked. And I went to Ren. I was like, what's the gap? He's like 12 years. I was like, eh? I turned to say, I was like, what's the gap? And I think, did you say you weren't sure, or was it 12 months? And I was like,
I thought maybe 12 months. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I couldn't get a gauge of how much time is meant to have passed, because the implication in the film is time passed. But obviously the cast haven't aged up. It's still the same cast. They still look like they did, you know, in part one. Obviously they filmed it back to back. And I know you can just let that go by, but I was like, Glinda's now graduated and is the Good Witch. Fiyero is now like head of the military. Let's just say that term. Someone's pissed off somewhere. I didn't give him his correct title. And obviously the witch hasn't been seen for an eternity since she disappeared that day. And I was just sat there like, I didn't get, for me, jumping in off that first, but I was like, I didn't get the initial impression that any time passed at all. And I don't mind that. I don't hold the film to that, but it didn't make it feel like not a part two. I've got a really... There's been a very weird text message today. Paul's going to laugh because he knows. There was a debate, is Wicked for Good a sequel? Now, I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of that, but I'm in this very weird OCD route where if a film says it's part one on the label and the second one says it's part two on the label, to me, that's a part one and a part two. If the films have different titles but were shot back to back, and theoretically is a part one and two, but they are very much different films, different titles. Let's say Dead Man's Chest at World's End. Let's say Infinity War and Endgame. If they were called Avengers 3 Part 1, Part 2, I'm inclined to do the whole it's a two-parter. I know Wicked is a two-parter, but when you're changing the names, to me, as the general audience who doesn't know the musical, who doesn't know the source material, I am sat there like, I am expecting a different film somewhat. I know it is a part two, though, and they should have stuck with part two as a title. I didn't even know For Good was a song until Tate told me after, because I was sat there like, For Good is a shit name for the second film, I'm sorry. They could have just put it, you know, the Wicked Witch, but they won't listen to me, marketing departments. Sorry to go on a weird tandem, but I didn't feel like that gap had passed. So I was inclined to think, a bit like June Part 1 and Part 2, the names are on the label. How does Part 2 start? Well, they're on the run still because that was how Part 1 ended. It felt like loads of stuff has happened between these, and that's not explored. That's not looked upon. Elphaba's on a quest to save all the animals. It didn't seem like that at the end of Part 1. The end of Part 1, it just seemed like she got screwed over and made a run for it. I don't blame her. So I was a bit, not lost, but it took me a couple of minutes to get into it. And I really liked the opening. I liked how it's directed. I liked where the story was going to go. And I knew the Wizard of Oz, as in the film, not the Wizard, has to come into this film. And it's going to obviously cross over and move forward with it at some point. Sorry to go on a tandem about parts, but did anyone think anything otherwise? Because you've both seen the musical, right? So I didn't know what to expect. And I don't know how that is on stage either.
Very quickly, I've done a little bit of, see what the internet says. No one actually knows the amount of time that's passed. It's never specified, so it's somewhere between 1 and 5 years. People have speculated, but it'd be nice to have that kind of clarified, because otherwise, people who don't know, audience members like us, would just be like, "Where are we in the story? Like, is it a straight continuation?" You assume it's just going to pick up immediately after, where the last film finished, but. I'd say it's a reasonably faithful adaptation between kind of stage to screen and stuff like that. Reasonably,
Yeah.
I mean the new numbers are really shoved into this film, like they stick out like sore thumbs. And apart from that, kind of like I don't remember it starting with the Yellow Brick Road kind of sequence or anything like that in the musical. I think they just went back into what song they start with in part 2 of the musical.
Is it The Witch is Dead?
Witch is Dead again, yeah. I think it's a bit
like
cyclical.
It's very much like a No One Mourns the Wicked, but it's like it is a recap, previously on Wicked. That is
pretty much, yeah.
I mean, I'm inclined to agree that it's 12 months as opposed to 12 years. The problem with 12 years is if it is anything longer than 12 months, or anything longer than a year, it doesn't make sense where they're at.
But they all left school.
Well, that's what I couldn't wrap my head around. I know it's a technicality.
I'm inclined to believe that the implication is the wizard has fast-tracked everyone's careers.
Yeah.
So the implication is that he's exerted his power to be like, you, the guy that she clearly fancies, you'll be the captain of the guard. You, the one that's her best friend, you'll be the good witch. Your sister, you can be the governor because I have sway of Munchkin land. So you'll take your father's position because also then I can keep an eye on the only blood relative of the Wicked Witch. So that would make sense for 12 months. Also the aging thing. But also when the film opens, it opens with the Yellow Brick Road still being built. That it's still in the process. It's got a great big truck that's literally farming out. They've got these big oxes that are pulling this truck with the bricks, and the witch then attacks it and sets the animals free, and the bricks go flying. So the road is still being built. That would make sense for 12 months. If it's anything longer than that, it doesn't make sense. The animals are still in the process of trying to escape from Oz. So the song that Elphaba sings, which is called "No Place Like Home," hey, like in Wizard of Oz, she sings it. It's a load of animals are trying to have basically dug a hole in the Yellow Brick Road to escape from Oz, and a lot of them can still talk. Again, if it had been longer than 12 months, they really should have lost the ability to speak under the wizard's rule, and they either would have been captured or got. So I think 12 months makes sense, but they should have made it more explicit, because the whole thing is they don't say in a minute, they say in a clock tick, which started to get on my nerves.
They say it about 5 or 6 times in the film.
I see you in a clock tick, and I was like, oh, that was cute the first time. Now it's really annoying.
Yeah, it was something I wanted to answer. And even, bringing up the road, because at the end of part 1, he's like, I don't know what colour to use on the road. And then the start of part 2 is like, we're just putting the final touches. I was like, oh, okay. Time has passed. And I know it's a really weird thing, but I wanted to talk about it to somebody because it just grated me at the start of the film. But sorry to start on that weird tangent. We're not doing it scene by scene.
Opening. No, but I did like that opening. Because I think as well, I like the fact that the thing, again, this is the thing about part 2 that I do like, and what I wish they did more of, is taking those things from the Wizard of Oz, the iconography of the Wizard of Oz, and saying, isn't that a lovely thing you love from that thing? And it's like, here's the darker truth. And I like the darker truth thing. And it's, how do you think a 65-mile long road made of bricks gets made? Well, it gets made by the exploitation of slave labor. Like, I like that element of it, that it's not just like, oh, it's magic. He's got no magic. It's, we lashed these 3 oxes together and we're whipping the shit out of them to make this road of brick. And I that was a really good opening. So, and that was the thing, was that it opened really strong. And I was like, oh, this is, and it's actually quite a good little action sequence. She is on the broomstick and she flips the stuff, and then she jumps on it and she surfs on it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This is really cool.
I'm with you on that. And that's it. And that, you said to me last year, Paul, part 2 is darker, and I prefer that just as a storytelling mechanism. And again, working out there's going to be Wizard of Oz things, knowing that people have to turn into these things one by one. I was like, okay, I'm excited for this, and maybe with that, let's talk about some of the characters, because obviously with part 2, it is more so following the characters on their journey retrospectively, which covers the main events of the film, but we'll do certain things elsewhere. I think the schedule works. Let's talk about Elphaba, played by Cynthia Erivo. We know it's always tricky saying this for part 2. Sometimes when films shoot back to back, not sometimes, most of the time, there's always like a consistency of performance, because obviously they've made it all back to back with one another. There's not enough time in between to improve. Not that it needed to be improved, but they just did it all together. Like Lord of the Rings is going to be the demo, isn't it? It's the consistency for 3 films. I thought Cynthia Erivo was great in this. And the character of Elphaba was the one I was intrigued by, because although Disney have done this maybe too much in recent years, I love the story concept of let's do something from the villain's point of view. Not necessarily make them sympathetic, but I would like to see the point of view of the villain. Why are they the way they are? It can get very boring. It can get very repetitive, because every villain that Disney does just tends to be actually they weren't the villain all along. Guessing in recent years they've nabbed all of that from the Wicked book from the 90s, which I believe really kickstarted that. I really liked Elphaba's journey in this, because in part 1, I think she's outstanding. I think it's an interesting character. But part 2, she is almost the victim, and you're siding with her. At the same time, we know, hypothetically, she's going to melt. Part 1 opens with, the end of the Wizard of Oz, the hat being there. So there was a curious factor for me. And I want to say the second part did it justice for her character arc, that you could let the film finish it be its own thing. Not to jump too far ahead, or, she got the guy, but she was able to rekindle the relationships with the right people. There was a completed character arc in that sense. Whilst I've moaned about in between part 1 and 2 about feel like I'm missing things, I certainly didn't in this one. And almost there's 1 or 2 awkward things that I don't think worked, but I really liked what they did with her throughout. I know this is a spoiler discussion, it's a bit generic for me to say. The thing I'm going to jump on that I didn't like, which is such a minute thing, which is irrelevant, when Dorothy's like trapped in the stairs and she's like, you're not coming out till you give me the shoes. And I'm just sat there like, that's a bit weak storytelling. You could work around that, because the thing I loved, which they did with Elphaba, was to bring the Wizard of Oz into it, which we'll get to later. Dorothy's basically stolen her inheritance. So I understand from a character perspective that she wants the shoes, because that's all she's got of her sister. That's jumping way too far ahead. But I was liking what they were doing to put the Wicked Witch in that perspective. And then you can look at the Wizard of Oz from Dorothy's perspective, where everyone's saying how awful this person is. But actually, we know through Wicked, it isn't that. So I appreciate what they did with the story, with the character. But I do think it comes down to Cynthia Erivo's performance more so than the writing, if I'm allowed to also say that.
I completely agree. I think Cynthia Erivo's performance, it's pretty much dead on the same as the first film. You can't really say that it's dropped in any performance at all. Every single song she does, she stands out. Her voice is phenomenal. Really, really talented. Great pick for the character in the first place. As far as story beats concerned, once again, I feel like I'm criticizing the musical here and I guess the book here. But I think off your last point, it's really difficult to compare The Wizard of Oz and link The Wizard of Oz to this film, because this film is not kind of The Wizard of Oz from a different perspective. There are various different things that have been changed from The Wizard of Oz to this. For example, in The Wizard of Oz, they go out of their way to make sure the Wicked Witch of the West is a horrible, horrible person. I'll have you, my pretties, and your little dog too. Like it's full on. Like they make sure that that she is evil. This is very kind of picky, choosy kind of scene for retelling, because she doesn't actually meet Dorothy until the very end of the film in this one, basically. So it's completely jumbled around, and of course the characters have to get into certain places at certain times. But as far as kind of the writing of her character in this film, she comes across as sympathetic. You want to be on her side. You want to go through her struggles. She's been oppressed and she's been kind of, thrown out. She's had the entire kingdom turned against her. And now it's kind of the situation of she doesn't want to rescue kind of her own self-image. She wants to rescue the people who live there, but also she wants to kind of rescue her friends. She wants to regain that connection. And the film does good with that because she goes back to her sister to see her sister. She goes back to see Glinda. She goes to see Fiera. Like, all of it's put together. And in the end, when she goes to the wizard, she doesn't threaten to kill the wizard. She's like, no, make it right. Like, it's plain and simple. Like, she doesn't come in, basically, she could, with the powers, immediately go full on and just go for it. But they kind of, the way the character is portrayed straight away is of that kind of for good nature. But I mean, her character is only as good as kind of the actors around her. And I think as far as the ensemble is concerned, everyone blows out the park in this one. Like, Ariana Grande, once again, perfect casting for this role. And the harmonies they're able to get in their voices together in the songs. Like, you can't talk about, Cynthia Erivo's songs without also talking about kind of, Ariana Grande coming in and giving those harmonies in songs like For Good and everything like that. It's just a really well-worked cast in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a and situation. She's terrific, and I think what she does well is that she manages to play the conflict, because not everything Elphaba does in the film you're going to agree with. She does certain things where you're like, I mean, you didn't have to do that, but like, you can see the rationale behind it, and you can see the pain and anguish, and I think she is absolutely fantastic. I think they nailed the casting of her and Glinda so well, because really this film and the previous film, it lives and dies on those two. And if you can believe that they've become friends, and even when they're in conflict in this one, you have to believe that there was at some point a time when they were best friends, and a time where they could be friends again. And fortunately, they're both such soulful performers that you do believe it. And I think as well, the scene that really captured that for me was when they're doing Wonderful, which is a solo for the wizard, and he's trying to convince her to join him, and Glinda's there, and the three of them are dancing, and Jeff Goldblum is doing Jeff Goldblum. He's proper.
They did a trunch ball.
He's proper enjoying himself. But there's a great bit where they're dancing, and then Glinda and Elphaba do the dance moves that they did in the Ozdust ballroom when they first became friends in part one. And you see that spark, and it's that great moment of like, there could be a happy ending to this. Like, it'd be a very short film, but you see that moment of, if everything can go right, everything can be great. It won't, because it can't. But that moment when the two of them, they're doing the hand gesture, they're doing the elbow thing, that was possibly my favorite moment, because it makes you yearn for what could be. So I think both of them I think they're both phenomenal. And when they got nominated last year for the Oscars, I was so pleased, because I was like, they are so good, and they're so deserving of that recognition. And I'd go so far as to say I think they're deserving again this time as well. I think they both give really phenomenal performances.
I agree. It's something I thought about. I love part one. I thought Ariana Grande was my favorite part of part one. Not that it takes anything from Cynthia Erivo, but I thought maybe because she's a musician, I didn't expect the acting side out of her. Whereas Cynthia Erivo, we've seen her as an actor so many times, and she has a West End background, so okay, she's gonna absolutely nail it. And with part two, we talk about Glinda as well. This was a weird one for me, because obviously I didn't know where the story was going to go outside of what we know about the Wizard of Oz, and I was curious about the Glinda stuff. I really liked her in this one, but at the same time, and this isn't a performance, this is maybe me. I don't mean to criticize the story, because I love the performance in it. I don't feel that Glinda was as interesting in part two as part one, and maybe that's something you guys might think of the musical, but to see her drawn in as basically the puppet for Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Yeoh, to play the angle that she secretly wants to help, but she kind of can't. And there's a bit of political in there. And I know this is a musical; it's not a drama, so you can't really go into the depths of the toll that could take, and not just like a Mon Mothma thing. You can't do that. It's a completely different entity. But her singing obviously is great. The performance is great. She's very funny still. The little Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker standoff. She's doing the proper thing we used to do as kids when it weaves in and out. I've got to say, though, I don't want to tempt into something terrible. When they have this brief falling out, she's like, come in, Greenie. I was like, whoa, is that the Oz version of the N-words? Because you have not said that for a film and a half. And you are just straight up like, I'm going to get you, Greenie. I was like, whew, okay. But she's good in it. I just don't feel there was a lot to her. And yeah, I've not got a lot to say, but I would like to see her nominated. I know that sounds really cheap because I've got nothing too much to say. The performance is very good, but again, it's like part one. There's the consistency of that leading performance. And I think someone else who we'll talk about in a bit, I think steals it for me.
I think you're right. She loses a lot of character in this part. She feels like a muted, kind of toned back character. But I think that's okay because part one is the focus on the friendship, whereas part two is more focus on the struggle. So for this part, you need more focus on Elphaba. You need that focus because it's no longer the two of them working together to go see the wizard. It is Elphaba versus the wizard. Which side are you on? So those two characters, of course, are going to get more characterization in part two. And I feel like having the focus taken away from kind of, should we say, the shiny kind of, the shiny, vibrant kind of always happy Ariana Grande, like it puts more focus back onto Cynthia Erivo, and that's what the film needed to do in that sense. But apart from that, yeah, I honestly might say that my favorite scene of the film was the fight between them, just because of that moment with Ariana Grande going through the whole kind of, wand waving and the cackle that she gives, the mockery and everything like that. That's kind of the good tongue-in-cheek kind of campy musical nature that I was expecting from like both of the films, which feels like the only thing that's kind of carried over from the first film. Everything else feels so serious. And I think maybe if this had a bit more fun in it, I know it's a serious topic, but it needed something.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I actually did like what they do with the character because I like that further down the line, in a way, she is still trying to play both sides. And I like the fact that at a certain point, she gets called on her shit. And when Madame Morrible says, like, you've benefited from this, like, you can act like you're the victim, but you wanted to be the good witch. You wanted the power. You wanted the fame. You have very happily, drunk from that cup. And I think that is a very good moment as well because Ariana Grande gives such a good performance of someone, all the way through. Whenever she's trying to broker peace, it's because it benefits her. If her best friend and the wizard get along, she can have everything she wants. She can have the husband she wants and the job she wants and her best friend and she benefits. And that scene with Michelle Yeoh is great because you can see it dawn on her that she's like, I actually need to take a staunch side on this, and it's going to be the tougher one. And I think that's a really good moment of character development because you do see it dawn on her that she's like, I've made a mistake here, and I should have been on my friend's side the whole time instead of trying to play the broker.
I like that she kind of ends up winning, not like it's Game of Thrones, but she's controlling it at the end, right? She's pulling the strings. I love that the concept that Elphaba can't tell her that she's alive. She's not allowed to know. But Glinda's going to go and do the right thing. She makes the wizard leave. She puts Michelle Yeoh into the prison. She sets the animals free. I liked how it ended with her character, and I think that's when we got the best out of her, like performance-wise. Was that like it's like the assurity she has as a character, and it's a weird one to talk about with it, but it's a great ending part, I think, as well. And someone who I want to sort of chat maybe a little bit more about is Fiyero, played by Jonathan Bailey, who to me, I thought he was actually the standout of this film. I've not seen that many things of him. I've seen him in Wicked Part 1. I've seen him in Jurassic World Rebirth. I've seen him in Wicked Part 2. I do not think I've seen him in anything else. I think he's done a lot of stage work. I know he's done like Shakespeare and stuff. This guy is going to be a big star, I think, in the film industry. We've all had chats. You guys seen murmurs? Not murmurs. He's not been rumored to play James Bond, but I think he's a name that people have spoke about as fans. Like, could this guy be a good fit for Bond? I've had those conversations. I was surprised at him in this because in Part 1 he was kind of likable, but I was like, oh, the kind of prince who isn't the dumb idiot. He likes the animals. Oh, there's a love triangle. I don't think he had much depth in that first one. Yet in Part 2, I felt he was one of the strongest character points. Him playing the side of the politics well, putting the guns up to Glinda, to the wizard as well, never knowing for sure, has he turned on her, has he not? I thought he was great. I loved him in this, even to the point of him turning into the Scarecrow. Just seeing them beating the shit into him on the hill. I loved that. I know we'll probably talk about that song later on. Big fan of Jonathan Bailey. Standout of this for me. No idea with predicting Oscars how far out we are, but he's potentially an outsider for a nomination for supporting actor, perhaps. I don't know if they'd do it. I certainly think Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo is going to obviously be the top of Universal's marketing for that, but I thought he did a very, very good job, and he stood his own with them from the musical side as well. I just felt like he was almost a completely different character in Part 2, and he was one of the more interesting characters.
I agree. He is such a fascinating character in Part 2, not just because of his relationship with Elphaba, but also he just has more screen presence in this part. Of course, he has Dance of Your Life in the first part, and he's seen throughout and stuff like that. But he's always seen as almost like a distant love interest at that point. Whereas in this part, like the character gets a lot more to do. Of course, it becomes an even bigger part, knowing of kind of his fate at the end, if that makes sense. That kind of having that knowledge going into the film and going, I know what that character is. I know what that character is going to become. And I know kind of the piece that needs to come into play. Seeing Jonathan Bailey in the film kind of play that part, it really worked. It's probably one of the things that in Part 2 I would say worked the most, if that made sense. And I think you're right. He is a standout performance in that. Hilariously, going back to the point of haven't seen him in anything before, I have seen him in something before, and it's something I wasn't expecting. The BBC TV series called Leonardo, which ran for 2 series back in the early 2010s. He played Leonardo da Vinci. I loved that show as a kid. Cannot believe that was actually him. But he's also a seasoned West End star, working on Les Mis, working on plays like Othello and Richard III. He's going to be a massive star in the future. And yeah, sure, have him as a pick for Bond. He's got the looks. He's British. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's in Bridgerton, and I am not a Bridgerton watcher, not a fan. But I know that a lot of people do love him from Bridgerton. But yeah, again, the only things I'd ever seen him in was, Wicked, Jurassic World,
Broadchurch.
Good.
Never seen it still.
Was he in Broadchurch?
He was in Broadchurch.
God, he would have been a bit younger. When was that? Like the mid-10s?
2013 to 2015.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Tell a lie. I have seen him in Broadchurch. Didn't even remember he was in it. Good Lord. And Broadchurch. That's how memorable he was. But no, I do think I thought he was very good in Part 1, and I think he's very good in Part 2. Sorry, I'm yawning. I think he is very good. The problem with the story is that by the time he gets to the third act, he's just not in it. He's just not in the film for like a whole third of the movie. He's just disappears and then shows up. And it kind of works on stage, but in the film you do go, where'd he go? Where is he?
Well, when they're singing to kill Elphaba, and we'll get to Tin Man, and I was sat there like, Jonathan Bailey wouldn't stand for this being sung, surely, and I don't think he's present in a couple of those clips when they're leading the charge. Because I sat there like, I was like, I need to see him. I was like, I want to know what he looks like. Because the excitement for me is seeing these people turn, I don't want to compare it to Darth Vader, but as a kid, you're like, oh, this is the film he turns into Darth Vader. How does it happen? I was like, how's he going to, well, I'll tell you who I thought was going to be who, but I was sat there like, I can't wait to see what he looks like. And obviously, this is one discussion we can say it. They very intentionally don't show his face till right at the furthest end. Even a close-up, they don't want to show it. They want it to be a big reveal. And I was like, Jonathan Bailey's not bad looking as a scarecrow, is he? Like, even his hair's on point still. And I did think the texture on the face was weird, but yeah, it's a scarecrow. Like, it has to be. So it was.
I thought he looked a lot like Ryan Reynolds. It was quite weird.
What, as Deadpool?
As a scarecrow.
It's the little lumps. Oh, yeah. No, that's ruined it. Yeah, I see the Ryan Reynolds comparisons. I mean,
let's still fit as a scarecrow. Like he's like, he does a bit where she's like, you're beautiful, and he's like, you don't have to lie. And it's like, dude, you're still like, all right, you've got your face
recently voted sexiest man alive. Yeah, sure.
you're still conventionally attractive, even as a scarecrow. Like you're definitely like sexiest scarecrow alive. Like, dude. Also, no offense, but she's fucking green. Like, if she's suddenly like, sorry, dude, not into that, it'd be like, oh, okay, I see how it is. I was all in. Oh, it was all about the inner beauty when you were the freak, but suddenly when I'm the freak, it's all about looks, is it? You know what? Get me a bucket of water. Like, he is still conventionally attractive, even as a scarecrow.
Yeah,
like, it is a problem. It did make me think a little bit of Ready Player One, where she's like, I'm hideous because I've got this tiny little birthmark.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, I'm hideous because I'm Jonathan Bailey, but I'm slightly bumpy. It's like,
it goes along with the Margot Robbie, Barbie, like, that whole thing where the narrator goes. Yeah, but...
Yeah, he is very good. And I don't know if it was makeup or CGI to make him the scarecrow, but it was good.
Surely CGI.
I thought it was makeup, or maybe a bit of both.
I think it might be a bit of both. I think it might be both, possibly.
Tin Man, I think, was practical.
Tin Man was practical, but I thought Scarecrow looked very CGI.
Except his legs. I don't think the legs of the Tin Man are practical because they're very thin and they're a bit steampunky looking.
I mean, let's get to a couple of antagonists. Because we're going to talk about the Wizard of Oz after characters, but I don't want to just go through every character like it's one by one. I want to talk about Jeff as the Wizard of Oz. We've spoke about him already tonight. Paul, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I loved him in this film. I kind of knew I would, but I was like, he was a bit caged in part one. You don't meet him until you're at the end. I'm like, this is going to be Jeff's film. I can't wait because they set the trap that he's going to be the villain. He's played this angle. What evil, dastardly things is he going to do? The same Jeff Goldblum who would come out to say he's now a vegetarian because, and I quote, the treatment of animals in Wicked has left him against eating meat. And I sat there like, the guy who's in Jurassic Park, the dinosaur film, who's been in The Fly, who's probably seen countless terrible things in other films too. It was the treatment of the CJ animals in the musical that's made him not eat meat. And I was sort of curious. I was just sat there thinking, okay, maybe it's going to be a little bit darker. I thought he was great. He was the comic relief the film needed. It was Jeff Goldblum being Jeff Goldblum. There was clearly and must have been a lot of improv on that set because I was absolutely pissing myself at the song when they're dancing purely because it looked like the Trunchbull swinging the girl around when they're all dancing with each other. And I was just sat there like, what on earth is going on? Like, what am I witnessing? Him dancing with them. And I think it was the calm before the storm. And whilst I don't think he was as dastardly evil as I wished he may have been, I don't know, again, what the musical's like with that. I do feel like, not he goes a bit absent. You get the great final sequence when you find out he's the father of Elphaba. Awful CGI on de-aging him. He looked like a clown in that weird costume. But I just felt like between like the opening third and the animals escaping with the revelation he's still evil, then at the ending where he's just a washed up guy, I was just a bit like, I felt like again I'm missing something here. Like I really liked him in this, and it was great to see that. But again, you get a bit of a darker side to him in part one, and then it just feels gone after that dance sequence. So I'm left wanting a little bit more. But again, I know he's not the focus of the film, right? This isn't his film. This is theirs, and I don't think he's truthfully. He's the villain, but for the concept of the story, it can't afford for him to be the villain because it has to go in line with the Wizard of Oz as well.
I'd say it's more of Madame Morrible's more of the villain, if anything, and he's just kind of there in the background, just doing kind of, you know, his own thing, and he's the voice of authority, but she's the one pulling everything behind the string, like behind the screen and everything like that. It's really interesting because Jeff Goldblum, they could have given him so much more material in this film. They could have given him so much more to do in this film, and in the end, all I can genuinely think of when I think of this film now is just the song "Wonderful," and I'm like, where else did he stand out in this film? They could have done a lot more with him. They could have done a lot more with him, especially because that is kind of the lead conflict. But instead, it feels like Madame Morrible's given kind of more of the kind of evil-centric role of this film and is really the one kind of pushing things and punishing things, which makes it even worse with the fact that she just kind of gets tidied away at the end. It's not even like a massive deal. I feel like a lot of this film is circumstantial just to put it in kind of the framing of the Wizard of Oz. And they make a lot of sacrifices just to get it there. And I think they really could have done a job of rewriting this and rewriting the musical. I know people love the musical, but pretty much everyone who watches a musical turns around and says they prefer part one to part two. Part two is a bit not as good. So I think they could have really had a good opportunity there for that. And I think that kind of the Wizard's actual character suffered for it in this, especially when, what do people know about the Wizard of Oz? Well, it's in the title. There's a Wizard of Oz. You've got Dorothy, you've got the characters, you've got a yellow brick road, you've got the witch. Like that's the key kind of, that is the key part of the Wizard of Oz. That is the key nostalgia factor for people who haven't seen the musical to go in and watch it. And he's built up in the first film to be this kind of grandiose character, and it's dropped, the ball gets dropped. But like you said, the final shot of him staring up kind of, you know, with that kind of anger, like I feel like they could have done so much more of it, but in the end they didn't.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe Madame Morrible is kind of Lady Macbething him a bit. Like she's kind of, which in a way I think plays into what they're trying to say, which is that people hold on to what little power they have by any means necessary. And obviously she gets a promotion in the in-between time. She goes from being this teacher to being like a press secretary and being, you know, sort of at the seat of power. And so it does seem like she, in the same way that Galinda is kind of trying to hold on to what she has, Madame Morrible is constantly trying to push the wizard, because she's like, yeah, but I like what I have with you in power, and without you in power, I don't have that. So I need you to be the guy that I need you to be. But I do think, I think Jeff Goldblum is good. Wonderful is a great song, and he is great in it because it is quite a fun song. And you know, it does that thing of you're not quite sure if he's telling the truth or if this is again him spinning a, you know, the first thing that he says to Elphaba in part one is he says, you got to give the people what they want. And so it seems like even through Wonderful, where he's like, hey, I'm just a guy from Kansas, and everybody said you should be a wizard, and I said, if you insist, and well, you know, I didn't really want to do this, but this is what happens. And it's like, is that the truth, or are you once again playing the victim to somebody who desperately wants you to be their hero? And you know, I think he plays that well, and he plays the scene in the dungeon where she sees all the animals caged, and you see him go from quite confident being like, hey, I let the monkeys free, we can do whatever we want, and then he's like, I've been sussed. And you can kind of see the growing thing of like, oh, it's going to be really difficult to charm my way out of this one. So I think he, like I say, I think he is good casting because you can get the light and the darkness, and he does get a few good Goldblum-isms in it. He does get a great bit after Wonderful where he's like, "I like just then when we were dancing," and you're like, "That was definitely not in the script. That is just Jeff Goldblum being himself." And he has a lot of like, yes. Which, you know, if you hire Jeff Goldblum, you got to let him be himself. Otherwise, why pay Jeff Goldblum money?
It's a good point, and kind of what you said about Madame Morrible as well. So I was quite open to this. I thought she was the weakest part of part one. I was like, I don't like the performance. I don't care for this character. I really liked her in part two. I was like, oh, finally, an actual fucking villain. Sorry to be that guy. I was like, not that I need a villain, but there was a moment where it hit me. I was like, she controls the weather. And I was like, wait, a fucking storm brings Dorothy to Oz. And I was like, oh, this is going to have to happen. And that was like during the film. That wasn't like the day or a week or month before. I was like, shit, this is happening very shortly. Last time I thought some of that was when Pedro Pascal got killed in Game of Thrones. Different conversation. That was mid-fight when I realised that. But I really like Michelle Yeoh in this one.
3 episodes after he was dead, I thought, oh, he's dead.
I was just watching it at night thinking, I was like, oh, he's doing really well here. And I was like, oh, no, hold on. I was like, I'm sure I read that the mountain's like a zombie. And I was like, oh, no. And then it happened. But Michelle Yeoh, I liked her much more in part two. She worked more as a villain. I quite like it that she's pulling the strings, that then complements Jeff Goldblum a little bit more, that she's ready to go to that next level of evil. And he's kind of sat there like, well, I've fucking unchained her to an extent. So, yeah, why not? Why not do the storm? So I liked her in that.
That scene is quite funny in that Glinda basically suggests if we make Elphaba believe that Nessa is in danger, she'll come out. And then Michelle Yeoh immediately goes, let's kill her. She
Rob a house on her.
There's like no conversation. She basically just goes, why pretend? Like,
yeah.
She's a psychopath. And also, I love Jeff Goldblum's like, yeah. Like, it's literally just like, kill a disabled woman? Yeah. Go on.
I mean, should we talk about that? Do we want to use this bit to talk about all the Wizard of Oz bits that have to come together?
Well, I will say, I think Michelle Yeoh is miscast.
I think she's miscast as well.
Because Michelle Yeoh is a very intense actress, and she's a great actress. And this is me saying I love Michelle Yeoh, and I will watch her in anything. But the problem is that I think Madame Morrible needs to be a bit more.
She needs to be a bitch.
She needs to be a bit. She needs to be a bit camper. Like Michelle Yeoh doesn't really do camp.
Like a Hannah Waddingham.
Well, this is the thing, right? So when my sister saw it on stage in the original West End production, it was Miriam Margolyes.
Wow.
Really?
Now,
wow.
Yeah. Now, she was the original West End actress that played.
Should have been incredible.
Yeah.
Right? You could tell by her being like, now, dearie, blah, 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 blah. Like, you can imagine her being like doing all the spells and camping it up and getting in Glinda's face. And you could also buy Miriam just going, drop a house on somebody? Yeah. Like, that's such a good piece of that's good cast. And I just felt like Michelle Yeoh, I get that John Chu has a relationship with her because of Crazy Rich Asians, and I don't have a problem with. I just think that you needed an actress that was a bit more camp and a bit more theatrical. Yeah, Hannah Waddingham would have been a good choice, or someone of that kind of over the top type thing. I just felt that she played it maybe a little bit too normal,
stiff,
if that makes sense. Also, her singing isn't great.
Yeah, that's what kind of threw me. Like she's quite a stiff character. And Night of Miriam Margolyes, that sort of sold it. Like, not to be like British, but hey, do you need a good villain? Chuck a British person in there. Like the old Star Wars thing. You got Jeff Goldblum. Okay, let's actually cast a real villain to sort of overshadow him. But I can't wrap my head around Mrs. Sprout being that. I just can't remember. Imagine a Wicked fan come up to us. She'd be like, that was 20 years ago. Grow up. But yeah, that's really changed things about how different that could have been.
Like a Patti LuPone type person, like somebody that could just ham it up, like Jessica Lange or someone like that. You know, someone that could do the camp, a Glenn Close type person that could just really ham it up to the extreme. Michelle Yeoh is great, but I just felt that she just doesn't.
Not for a musical, she didn't work for me.
No.
At all, from a musical perspective. And
Yeah,
she's a great actress, and we know her as an actress, and we've seen her in action stuff. But her being in musical territory didn't work as much.
Yeah, I thought she was the weak link.
Let's do the Wizard of Oz stuff. So I'm not just going to chuck everything together. There's a lot to comprehend here, so I can finally talk about this. Piecing together the last 12 months has been quite something. And there was a moment in which I found out this is a change from the stage. Elphaba's sister is not disabled in the stage play, but I believe she is normal in the stage, correct?
She's in a wheelchair for the first. So the sequence where she enchants the shoes. So she is in a wheelchair at the beginning, and basically the change they've made is in the stage show, she enchants the slippers, and she's able to walk. And they've changed that in the film because the actress that plays Nessa is genuinely wheelchair bound. So she genuinely does use a wheelchair, which is great. So they had to adapt it because obviously it would be weird to.
They didn't want to be ableist. They didn't want to say, "Oh, look, your character can now walk," and actually animate her walking or something like that.
Yeah, like hold her up with strings like a marionette. So
that's what I was thinking they were going to do, not in a horrible way. But I thought.
So they make her levitate instead, which was the compromise, which I guess makes more sense because it's only one moment really in a.
Because it's the mood springs. She's so happy and elated, she goes up, and then obviously she comes crashing down. No pun intended. When obviously the bot comes in the room and that. So the key thing here for me, the sister is a witch as well, based off Wizard of Oz. So I was like, okay, she's going to need to be a bit horrible. That sister is rancid in this film. We haven't spoke about Bok. I'm just putting the two of them together. What a terrible. She's a sympathetic character in the first one, not because she's disabled. Bok's using her to try and get to Glinda to be in her good books because he still loves her. So I thought he's legitimately moved on from that. And then King Incel himself sees on the magazine she's getting married and it's his destiny to leave. For the sister to then take her town hostage to stop her ex going on a train, I thought was insane.
Revoking visas, putting people on passport control.
Yeah, she was like one step away from having her own team of ICE agents.
Just targeting
the Munchkins. The Munchkins shan't roam free because this one guy that left me. And what really not sickened me, this where I might sound like a sicko, that's probably the right term. I was sat there like, I just can't fucking wait to see the house fall on her. And because obviously the Wizard of Oz, you see the legs, you see the shoes, iconography moments, that has to happen. You have to surely see it. So when I started clocking about all the wind, everything, I was like, oh my fucking God, we're going to get the house scene. And I just thought it was funny. I don't mind saying that. She's obviously looking for Bok for her own safety. Obviously, he's the Tin Man at this point in time. The house just falls on her. There's something quite like Family Guy orientated about that. And I just thought it was amusing. Not as funny as Ren did. There was a lot of laughter there. But
it would have been, I was going to say the only difference between kind of that and a Family Guy sketch would be like a giant X on the floor where she would have to like actually stand.
This is worse than the time fell on me.
But I loved it. I thought it was a genius way to bring Dorothy in. I love the fact that Bok is also really horrible, and then the incel became the Tin Man, and then he was even more of an incel after. I loved the design of the Tin Man. It looked very practical. Like, it looked like they've painted someone's face, which I just wanted to say. I don't know if it's CG. I don't know if they showed it in any trailers or posters. It looked so cool. This is where I get to embarrass myself and tell everyone. I thought Fiera was going to be the Tin Man and Bok was going to be the Scarecrow. So when he became the Tin Man, I was gobsmacked because I'd spent a year thinking it was the other way around. But yeah, your thoughts on some of that Wizard of Oz stuff as well? Because that's a big thing of part two. That's a huge selling point in the second film for me.
Which is hilarious because actually watching the stage show, it was my least favorite part of it. The changes that they made and the way that they were kind of shoehorning the story into fitting that when clearly at that point it didn't fit. It didn't work. And with this film, they keep it very similar. You don't really see Dorothy's face at any point, which is great.
Yeah.
I think that means the focus is not on Dorothy and her journey. It's more on kind of what's happening outside of the Wizard of Oz instead of making a full Wizard of Oz remake. But seeing the different characters being created, I kind of, I don't know if this is just kind of a personal thing, but I think the fact that there has been time that's been passed from part 1 to part 2, and yet in the space of what seems to be like 1 or 2 days that part 2 takes place, all of this happens and the characters seem to gain their motivations to join Dorothy on the journey. It feels very rushed. It feels like the pace immediately just snaps up straight away. And it doesn't feel like it fits in properly, if that makes sense. Like, it almost feels like there needs to be more time. Like, there's almost too much preamble before Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz events actually kick off in this film to get you from part 1 to kind of set up part 2. And by that time, it's kind of like, oh, wow, we're literally at the end. Like, they're at the final tower. It's kind of over. All the characters have kind of already transformed into their very different things. And yeah, I just find it very, very odd in that sense. But I mean, it's clever in the sense of, how it originated, putting the characters in their place and stuff like that. I just don't think it properly fit.
Yeah, I personally think they should have done more Wizard of Oz-ness, shown Dorothy, just because I feel like in a stage show it works quite well, having her just be a silhouette and things. I think in a film it starts to become quite frustrating, and I think that for me anyway, I felt
like they do everything but show her.
Yeah, and I think that would have maybe mitigated some of the third act issues, which is that you then get, like, you do then start to go, okay, I understand why the Tin Man has joined Dorothy on this quest to murder Elphaba.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand why the Lion, but you're her boyfriend. Like, are you just there like, yeah, kill her. Yeah. Okay. Let's kill this.
My theory, because I rewatched The Wizard of Oz the weekend, so after part 2, and obviously when you meet Scarecrow, I'm so seeing Scarecrow thinking of Cillian Murphy. Different Scarecrows.
There's nothing
obviously,
to fear.
He's in the field. He's got no brain, and I was like, okay, I don't want to like overthink this and overanalyze The Wizard of Oz into Wicked. But I was like, is he just playing dumb the whole time? Because you don't see him really with them a lot. He's not there at the end bit because obviously he's saving her. But like, maybe he had a brain and he was just politically neutral. Where was Gondor when we called for aid? All those sorts of memes. Like, they have my life on Facebook. Because when they're singing about killing her, he's not there. He was not there at all. Because I want to see the Scarecrow's face. Because why would the Scarecrow be joining in with this? And I don't want to call it a plot hole, but I think it's a flaw. And if it is for that reason, he doesn't have a brain because he's in love with her. He doesn't want to say is. I was just sat there like, well, they needed to say something, but I felt like they just didn't want to show Scarecrow's face till the end. And then that then negates. Then you can only see the Tin Man because they're already not showing Dorothy.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's where I think the issue starts to. The issue of being that faithful to the stage show, but I did like. There is one line in "As Long as You're Mine" that did make me chuckle, and I think some people didn't understand why I laughed, which is that when it gets to his verse, his first line is "Maybe I'm brainless, maybe I'm wise." And I did go, ha! That's cool. And I think a couple of people were like, why is he laughing at that? It's a romantic song. What's wrong with you, dude? And I was like, good lyrics. That's good lyrics there. I think as well, because it dawned on me a bit later why Bok was so awful, is that he then doesn't have a heart, because Nessa tries to do magic. She tries to shrink his heart or something. She does something. She
tries to like take his heart away or something.
Yeah.
Like, if I can't have it, no one can. It was like that, wasn't it? Or
his heart starts to shrink, and the only thing that Elphaba can do is to turn him into something that doesn't require a heart, which does make sense why he's then such a dick. And he is such a dick.
He deserved it, didn't he? As Tobey Maguire
he really did. Like, he really did.
The one that got me was the one that got me, and to be fair, when Elphaba starts to be like, do you know what? Fuck this, guys. Okay, if you want me to be evil, I'll be evil. Is when the lion that she saved from captivity was like, it's her reason I'm a pussy. I'd be like, oh fuck you, man. I should have left you in that cage.
And then Bok like sprayed him like, look what she did to this lion.
He's
look
a coward because of Elphaba. And it's like, no, what? You were in it. Like, if I was Elphaba, I'd be like, no, seriously, you were in a cage. Like, you were in as a baby, you were in a cage. At the same time that they were racist towards the goats, they put you in a cage, and I saved you.
I mean, in this context of the Wizard of Oz, Dorothy is radicalized by incels, the far right racist, to go and murder someone for their different skin color. It's like, you know.
And the thing is that is something that I do think is interesting about the whole story, is that it is about a government basically being like, if we suppress people, then other people will look to me for power. And I mentioned this to people, I think you're looking too deeply into it. It's like, he takes away the animal's abilities to speak. He suppresses speech. And then when one person says, I think this is bad, he's like, you know why she thinks it's bad? Because she's green. Evil green woman. Like, the fact that Madame Morrible goes, her outward appearance is a manifestation of the evil within her. I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys. They're not subtle. I know you were saying about the greenie thing that she says when she's like, bring it on, greenie.
Yeah.
In the first film, she does go, Elphaba gets upset and she goes, I believe the artichoke is steamed. I'm like, that's racist, dude. Like, you are a white supremacist. I don't like you.
One
You're
thing,
a bad person.
One Wizard of Oz thing we haven't talked about, which I really want to very quickly, there's not much to say. I'd go to war to have the flying monkeys on my team. They were so fucking cool in this. They're cool. Terrifying in the Wizard of Oz because they had just terrifying designs and masks. But the little main one that was like, is that an Andy Serkis Caesar render somewhere? Maybe. He looked so cool, and for me, who doesn't know what to expect but knows, okay, they're going to have to side with her. She's going to gain their trust and control. I love the flying monkeys angle that they were like protecting her, looking out for her. And it's a really weird side tangent, but I didn't want to do this and not talk about the flying monkeys ever so briefly at my end. And obviously they were part of what I thought was the best song of part 2, which I don't know the title of. I know, Tate, you do. But
No Good Deed.
No Good Deed. That was the moment in which I was like, okay, there was a banger there. Like, that's what I've waited 2 films for. Again, I'm not great with music. Someone's probably screaming somewhere. Loads of people are weeping at the song with the doorway at the end. And I'm just sat there like, she had a fucking army of monkeys in the camera frame where she was screaming and singing. And I was like, I'm ready for war now. Obviously, then it just ends up being quietly dispossessed into a finale. Your guys' thoughts on the songs? I'm just going to quietly dip out because I don't know the musical. I'm rubbish of music. I've got not a lot to say other than the fly. I keep calling it the Flying Monkey song. That to me was the best song in the film by
clear standout to the point where they cut to black afterwards. That's how good that song was. Like all the other songs, it just plays through. But that one, they're clearly expecting people to give it a round of applause like a musical.
Did they Andrew Garfield it in No Way Home? You know, when there's like an elaborate pause for the audiences to cut. I was like, that cut to black felt a bit longer than a cut to black.
But I mean, the songs that are from the original musical in this part are fine for the fact that they are the songs from the original musical. I was severely disappointed by the new songs. I can say that the original songs, not as good as part 1, but I still enjoyed them kind of in this part. But the new songs were so bland. Like, There's No Place Like Home felt like a kind of a song written for Wish. Like, it just felt like it didn't fit at all. It's like it didn't fit her kind of slightly edged character. It was almost too clean. It was really, really odd, and it just didn't fit in the film at all. Girl in the Bubble felt like a song that Ariana Grande would throw on her album, didn't have to have any context to Wicked at all. like, you know, a slow melodic kind of, you know, woe is me kind of song, you've already got a woe is me kind of song in that part of the film, haven't you? I swear there is a song in that part of the film that like perfectly encapsulates that without
She does a
needing a new one.
reprise of I'm Not That Girl.
You
So
don't,
she has
yeah,
the I'm Not That Girl reprise.
but then you've got Girl in the Bubble, which is basically another reprise of that same song. It just, no, they don't fit. And I've already mentioned why the two songs are in the film. The two songs are in the film because they both won an Oscar for singing. They're not getting it. Like, you know, K-pop Demon Hunters and Sinners are far and beyond the two favorites for that now. Like, that is going to be sealed away by one of those two. And I don't think, you know, especially with the reception this film's got already, and especially with the reception these two songs have got already, I don't think they're going to have any kind of presence when it comes to kind of, you know, Oscar voting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the songs just aren't as good. They just aren't. Like, and there's fewer good ones. Girl in the Bubble made me think of Somewhere Over the Rainbow in that I wanted to fast forward through it to get to more. Like when you watch The Wizard of Oz, Somewhere Over the Rainbow is a gorgeous song. Judy Garland sings it great. But I really just want to get to Munchkin Land and start getting to, you know, the good. I just want to get to the good songs. Like, it's fine, but I really can we get to Lollipop Guild now, guys? We need to speed this shit up. And that one, I was a bit like, I get it, you're sad. Can we go back to the Flying Monkeys, please? And can we go back to the good songs? I was like, because also I was a bit like, it didn't dawn on me that it was a new song. I was like, God, I've really erased this one from my memory because I do not remember this. And then when I heard it was a new one, I was like, oh, that'd be why. I was like, that'll be a classic. They were fine. I mean, the Fly Monkeys I did like because monkeys are cool. And also, Elphaba has a really good moment with the Fly Monkeys when she's like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. And then she catches herself and she goes, I'm so sorry I did this to you. And I'm like, see, someone's taken responsibility for stuff, even though you were technically tricked into it. But at least you're admitting that you've got some blame. Good for you, Elphaba. I really hope
also,
you throw down with that scarecrow.
What the hell are they moaning? They got given wings.
I think it was painful. In the first part, it was painful for them, wasn't it?
It was pain for about 30 seconds to get wings. Like, sorry to go on a tangent. Yeah, I love the monkeys though. Right. This was going to transition to my favourite scene, but I've spoken. My favourite scene was the Fly Monkey song. The one thing I had to your music discussion, because I don't know the songs, I just assumed one of the new songs was the awful one at the start when she's singing to the animals when they're going under the brick wall.
Yeah, that is.
Oh, that's the new one.
That's one of the new ones. Yeah,
it just sounded awful because it's like no one's going to actually write a song about the animals going under the brick road. Really, if I'm going to be that guy, that song should have been performed by Elton John and been called Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, because that would have actually had the reason to be called that. But they missed the opportunity there. And instead there was that.
Oh my God, stuff. Imagine. That would have been great. Oh, and it would have given Cynthia Erivo another chance to do a because that's what's missing from part 2 is her going
yeah.
I have a theory that her nails grow a millimeter every time she does that line, and that's why her nails are so long, because she has to keep singing it. And also, I was really upset. This is a really dumb thing to be upset about, but at the Oscars, right, they made her sing Defying Gravity. She did the ooh. They showed a clip of, because you know they do the bit about Best Picture.
Yeah.
When they did the Best Picture clip, they did the ooh. Her Oscar clip was not that. I was like, that's the best bit. That's the bit. Make her do the ooh. I was like, this is bullshit. Oscar's done what you're doing.
Stage. Aren't they doing an event soon? That's a different chat. I'm sure I read they're doing a concert or a Wicked concert or a Wicked event together.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. One
it's already been done.
Night.
I'm sure this will have a sing along in cinemas as well, going along with it.
It was fun. They do some they do songs from the film, and then there's a nice bit where Stephen Schwartz, the composer, is playing the piano, and they're singing together, and then Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth come out, and they're all singing together. That's quite nice.
That's cute.
There's a funny bit. There's a funny bit where she sings, where Ariana Grande sings "Popular" to a little kid, and the little kid clearly does not want to be there on stage. Like, that kid wants to be anywhere but in front of Ariana, and she's properly trying to like get this kid involved and be like, she's singing the song and she's like in front, like being like, give me something back, and the kid's like, it's like, Jesus.
Could have been worse. They could have brought Northwest.
Ariana.
They could have brought Northwest to sing with her for no reason, like the Lion King. Different conversation. That'll change it. Hey, your favorite scene?
Very simple. It is "No Good Deed" as the best musical number of the film, and it is Ariana Grande's Jedi trials of trying to spin a lightsaber.
See, yeah, I think I've got two. Mine is probably when they sang "For Good," because I did cry. I had a good old sob.
Sorry, I'm on
Ren.
that.
No, it's fine. No, but to be fair, even I know it's stupid for me to be crying at shit. I cry at everything, though. You know this. You've been with me in films. I cry at everything. Ren, lovely Ren, gave me a pack of tissues before the film and went, "I know you'll need these." And I thought, I cried. But also the other bit is where they just decide to murder a woman in a wheelchair. just
That was my Joe Pesci audition. Right, okay. Well, that rounds up pretty much everything. So we're going to head into our final thoughts because I'm also conscious of the clock. We're almost got an hour and a half. Final thoughts, everybody, on Wicked for Good. For me, and it's kind of hard to talk about part two without talking about part one, if I'm totally transparent. I still like this film. I know I've maybe criticised it a bit, but it's good to have the chat with people that this is what I was thinking after watching it. Yes, we saw it 6 days ago. Yes, when you were watching this, you'd have seen this maybe in the last couple of days. You might have seen it loads. I still think this is a good film. I still liked it as a film. I still maintain it's probably on par with part one for me. I think maybe because I had different expectations heading into part two compared to part one, that I didn't know what to expect with low expectations a year ago. Whereas this time around, I'm like, okay, now all these things are going to have to happen. How are they going to do that? And it wasn't like the disillusionment of this didn't happen there, I wanted it. Loved all that sort of stuff. It just felt like maybe there was something missing. And I think whatever that something is, that's not fault with this film. I think it's the actual source material. But for me, I recommend this. Absolutely see it at the cinema. And I will say, I know I've not spoken about this because it's not much of discussion until you get the box office numbers. This feels like a big event. The tie-in merchandise, the marketing, the campaigning, the premieres, just like part one, it is everywhere. You cannot avoid it. Cinemas need that. The industry needs that. And credit to everybody involved for making it the way it absolutely needed to be done. And it does feel like these will go down as classic films. These will be revisited. People will talk about these for years. Paul, you mentioned your son as well. There's also going to be, when he's old, without presuming, it's going to be like they'll probably remember the experience of Wicked, and it was this huge thing for him. They're the kind of things that's so important to cinema because then the next generation are going to get their memories of their events, and we need to stamp out people watching them at home. So kudos that he wants to watch it on his birthday. But yeah, sorry, it's got a weird tangent, but this is a big part of the cinema experience.
My personal opinions on this film, I think I've been quite harsh on this review, but the only reason why I've been harsh is because part one is such a phenomenal musical, and part two is so close to almost being there as well. But once again, my disappointments mainly come from the musical side of things, not from the actual film side of films. The film is very watchable. People are going to enjoy it. People are, of course, going to go watch it. I fully expect it to have an amazing box office, and I fully expect it to be remembered fondly. Like, I think it's going to be well held up, both parts, down the line. And yeah, I don't think it's as good as part one, but it's still a good film.
Yeah, I mean, I think John M. Chu did the absolute best he could with what he was given, and what he was given is a lesser story with lesser songs. But the stuff that he had control over, the sets, the costumes, the performances, I think he's really, he's excelled at that. And I think box office wise, it will do great, because I think what people forget is musical theatre nerds are like comic book nerds in that they will go and see this 100 times. So, you know, even if you think Endgame is not as good as Infinity War, or it's a baggier film, it's still going to do great because comic nerds will go 100 times. And I think the same thing is true of the Ariana stans and the Galinda and Elphaba shippers. They're going to see they're going to see it like 20 times, and that's fine. And that's a good thing because people need to go to the cinema, and you know these are the sort of films that get people. And also, I think towards the winter months, you want something you can take the whole family to, and musicals are quite good for that. You know, it's something that you could take grandma to, and you know, dad goes reluctantly, mum wants to see it, daughter wants to see it. So I think it's quite a good thing in that regard that it will get. It's a good family film as well. That it's a bit darker, but it's still got cuddly animals. It's still funny. It's still romantic. So I think it's as good as it could have been, given that they were never going to stray from the source material as much as I think they should have. It's as good as it could be.
Very fair, very well said, and that is going to round out our spoiler discussion on Wicked for Good. So I do hope people at home have enjoyed it. As we said, please do comment your thoughts. It will be out this weekend. You'll be able to talk about it. Maybe we're going to start rewatching The Wizard of Oz or other things. Comment us. Let us know what you think. Whether you like the musical, you don't like the musical, if that impacted your thoughts on part 2. I think we've done well to get a bit of a different background from each of us. We've all got our own experiences with it. I needed both your help with the musical side of things alongside the fact you'd seen it, which is great because there will be people that have seen the musical that haven't, and it's important to get those opinions. So that is everything for Wicked for Good. There isn't going to be a third film. I'm sure someone will start a rumor somewhere. That is the musical adapted. Maybe they'll go remake The Wizard of Oz. Of course they won't. But I believe The Wizard of Oz is playing at that ridiculous Vegas sphere thing. I don't know. Different conversation. I think Harry Potter's getting the same treatment. Warner Brothers AI, a deadly combination with one another. So that is me rounding out. Tate, Paul, thank you so much for joining me tonight, for being involved. Take your time out your night to be talking Wicked. I very much appreciate it. And I hope the people at home have enjoyed it too. So once again, thank you all so much. Take care. See you on the next one.